My rich boss tried to ruin my life. She didn't expect I'd fight back harder. My insanely rich employer tried to embarrass me in front of a crowd, but I flipped the script and embarrassed her instead. I thought that would be the end of it, but it turns out, the rich don't like losing. Especially not publicly. I was 21 when I landed my first nanny job. Not just any gig, though. I was working for the Devereux family in Hillsborough Heights. Old money. Serious wealth. I worked 12-hour shifts, 5 days a week, and before long they treated me like part of the furniture. By week 3, they'd stopped locking the jewelry drawer and didn't even bother turning the security system on when I was around. One day, the matriarch, her name was Veronica, asked if I'd plan a party for her. She offered $900 for it and said I could even attend, but only under one condition. I couldn't tell anyone I was the nanny. That should have been a red flag, but honestly, I said yes without thinking. I'd never been in a serious relationship before, and part of me hoped maybe I'd meet someone at this party. A charming guy in a linen suit, maybe. Planning the whole thing felt like I was coordinating a high-profile wedding. Every little thing had to be perfect. Centerpieces, wine glass shapes, the shade of the patio umbrellas. Veronica would swan in and out of the room while I worked, bragging loudly on the phone about how she was raising 3 kids and planning a grand celebration single-handedly. I'd hear her laugh and her friends cooing on the other end. It made my skin crawl, but whatever. I was getting paid and the check was real. But as the date crept closer, Veronica's entire vibe shifted. She stopped being sweet and started snapping at me like I was a misbehaving pet. Once, she actually chucked a bottle of sparkling water at my feet because I didn't light the citronella candles fast enough. Her kids even noticed. One afternoon they came to me crying, asking, "Why is mommy yelling all the time?" That's when I knew I wasn't imagining things. I distracted them with backyard games until they were too tired to remember they were upset. Finally, the night arrived. I slipped into a sleek emerald dress I'd saved up for. Heels, earrings, the works. I barely recognized myself in the mirror. As I pulled into the Devereux estate, I felt like I'd stepped onto a movie set. The place was glowing. Rows of luxury cars lined the circular driveway, and the house was filled with people wearing designer everything, sipping drinks that probably cost more than my rent. The chandeliers sparkled over long tables filled with gourmet hors d'oeuvres. I was still soaking it all in when Veronica appeared beside me. Even though her eyes were tight with tension, Veronica greeted me with a dazzling smile and began introducing me to her inner circle. For a while, everything seemed fine. People chatted about ski resorts and board positions, sipping expensive wine under the warm glow of chandeliers. Then came a lull in conversation. That's when Veronica made her move. "You know, Amelia here had her first baby over 2 years ago," she said, raising her glass, "and still doesn't know how to change a diaper." The table erupted with laughter like she'd just told the most brilliant joke of the night. I laughed too, forced and tight, trying not to kill the mood. But Veronica wasn't done. She once had to call me because her nanny didn't answer, and her kid wouldn't stop crying. "Isn't that right, Amelia?" She leaned into the punchline, smug as ever. More laughter. One woman even spilled her drink, wheezing as she clutched her stomach. "Veronica, you're incredible," one man said between cackles. 3 kids and not a single nanny in sight. "You're basically a saint." Just like that, the group turned into a chorus of praise for Veronica. Her brilliance, her hands-on parenting, her supposed sacrifice. I had planned to smile and nod all night. But that smug tone, those fake compliments, something in me snapped. I quietly slipped away from the group and found the kids playing with blocks upstairs. I didn't do anything drastic. Just made a few exaggerated silly faces and poked fun at one's tangled shoelaces. 2 of the kids laughed hysterically, but the youngest looked confused and suddenly started bawling. Jealous, probably, or just overwhelmed. Within seconds, all 3 were crying in unison, loud, echoing sobs that filled the whole upper floor. I waited. Then, loud enough for the crowd below to hear, I called down. "Veronica, your kids are losing it. Come show us what all those parenting classes taught you." Her face turned sheet white. Panic took over. As half the party turned to see what was going on, she hurried up the stairs and scooped up her middle child, bouncing him awkwardly like a sack of flour. He shrieked louder. The other 2 wailed in sympathy. Guests went silent, watching the woman who'd just been praised as a parenting goddess completely fall apart in front of her own children. I stood by the staircase, calm as ever, smiling politely as the chaos unfolded. Eventually, Veronica looked at me, completely defeated. I stepped in, picked up the toddler, made a weird honking sound, and just like that, they all started giggling. The crowd burst into applause. A few people even pulled me aside, offering nanny positions on the spot, some of them offering double or triple what I made with the Devereux. I felt like I'd won, but I should have known better. Veronica wasn't going to let me leave that party without consequences. It didn't take long for Veronica to show me just how far rich people will go to protect their image and punish anyone who threatens it. The morning after the party, I woke up to 3 missed calls from her, followed by a blunt text. "You're dismissed. Return the house key by noon." I wasn't shocked by the firing. What did surprise me was walking into my apartment lobby later that afternoon and finding a delivery guy holding an enormous bouquet of rare, tropical flowers. The note simply read, "Adored your presence last night. Let's talk. Celeste Rothwell." A phone number followed. Celeste was impossible to miss at the event. Regal, poised, and draped in enough jewels to make a diamond mine jealous. I hesitated about calling her, but I wouldn't have long to think. By that evening, things escalated fast. I got a frantic text from my friend Tasha, who worked as a scheduler for another family in the elite Brentmere circle. Are you okay? She asked. Everyone's gossiping about you stealing some sapphire pendant from Veronica's master suite. I froze. My heart started pounding so hard I could hear it. I had never laid a single finger on anything in that house besides diapers and dinner plates. I called Veronica immediately, rage boiling in my throat. But she answered sweetly, as if we were old friends catching up. Oh, I'm sure it's all a misunderstanding, she cooed. But I had to file a report, darling. It's standard for insurance. This wasn't about a job anymore. She was trying to ruin my life. With trembling fingers, I dialed Celeste. She picked up immediately, like she'd been waiting. I figured I'd hear from you, she said coolly. Veronica's nothing if not predictable when she feels threatened. Celeste invited me to lunch the next day at a place I recognized from celebrity Instagram feeds. L'Orangerie, the kind of spot where a salad costs more than my electric bill. That night, I didn't sleep. I gathered every scrap of evidence I had. Screenshots of texts where Veronica praised my work, photos I'd taken of the kids with timestamps, even a few kind notes she'd scribbled on post-its. The next morning, I put on the best outfit I owned, still thrifted, still clearly not couture, and braced myself for judgment. But when I arrived and told the host I was meeting Celeste Rothwell, the man's posture straightened like I'd said Beyoncé. Celeste was already at her table, wearing low-key athleisure that somehow screamed private stylist. She greeted me with a nod and got straight to the point. She's already called half the people who were at the party, she said over her mineral water. Told them you're a manipulative nanny who weaponized her kids. But the truth? No one even likes Veronica. She's tolerated because her husband bankrolls half of Brentmere's charities. Then she leaned forward and added, I run a premier domestic placement agency for high-net-worth families. I saw how you handled those kids, and Veronica, you were brilliant. Celeste offered me a position with one of her top clients, the Winthrops, who had twin 4-year-olds. The pay? Triple what I'd made before. But there was a catch. I needed to restore my reputation first. She already had a plan. Celeste introduced me to her friend Daniel Grayson, a lawyer who usually billed Fortune 500 companies at $950 an hour. He agreed to help, for free, purely because he found Veronica entertaining. Together, they drafted a cease and desist letter about the false accusations, plus a formal request for a public retraction to be sent to everyone in their circle. Shockingly, Veronica folded almost instantly. A mass email went out the next day. So sorry for the confusion. Turns out the pendant was in our home safe all along. But the smear campaign had done its damage. I thought I could finally breathe, especially since things were going great with the Winthrops. Their kids adored me, and I was finally beginning to feel stable. Then, 2 weeks in, Mrs. Winthrop pulled me aside with a grave expression. We received some concerning material, she said gently, showing me a packet of printed screenshots, post from a fake social media account using my name and photos. The content? Horrifying. Drug use, lewd comments, even racist slurs, none of which I had ever written. It was a masterclass in digital forgery, the kind of thing that could ruin me forever. I knew instantly who was behind it. No one else had that kind of malicious creativity. Mrs. Winthrop, to her credit, agreed to let me prove my innocence. But I knew the clock was ticking. I called Celeste the moment I left the room. She exhaled sharply as I described the situation. Of course, she muttered. Veronica always has a plan B. Textbook Veronica. Celeste muttered the next morning, before texting me an address to meet her, an unmarked office in a quiet part of West Hollow. Inside, I was introduced to someone who went by the name Nova, a former hacker who now ran a discreet cybersecurity agency catering to the ultra-rich and ultra-paranoid. She was in her early 30s, decked out in neon blue hair and enough ink to make a tattoo parlor jealous. Elite problems need elite solutions, Nova said with a wink, launching her tools to trace the fake posts and compile evidence that they'd been fabricated. Within a day, she'd identified that the content had been created using a VPN, but she still picked up on enough digital crumbs to strongly suggest it came from a device tied to Veronica's household. Not quite enough for a lawsuit, but definitely enough for Celeste to put into play. Next came the part that showed me how real power moves through whispers and dinner parties. Celeste set up a brunch with several key women from the same social ecosystem, including Eloise Montgomery, whose husband, it turned out, ran the hedge fund that managed a huge portion of Veronica's family investments. As we sipped sparkling elderflower tea and nibbled on grilled endives, Celeste casually mentioned some recent unsettling behavior she'd heard about Veronica. Eloise's brows lifted with interest. Apparently, her husband had been mulling over integrity-related reassessments regarding certain longtime clients. That's when I realized this wasn't gossip. It was strategy. By the end of brunch, Veronica had been uninvited from 3 upcoming charity events. Celeste explained that was essentially social exile in their world. And meanwhile, Nova had compiled a full forensic report, proving the posts were fraudulent. The Winthrops reviewed the report and thanked me for staying transparent. I threw myself into work with renewed focus. 2 months passed, and I was thriving, traveling with the Winthrops to Aspen and Lake Geneva, making real savings, and finally sleeping at night. Celeste, by then, had become both my mentor and my closest ally. I'd almost managed to forget Veronica, until one bright afternoon at a private members-only park, where the kids and I were enjoying the sun. I glanced across the playground and locked eyes with her. Veronica's expression turned from stunned to furious in seconds. But instead of creating a scene, she strutted over with an unsettling smile. Long time, she chirped sweetly before kneeling beside the Winthrop twins. Hello, darlings, she said in a syrupy voice. Did you know your nanny used to look after my children too? Want to hear a secret about her? Before I could stop her, she whispered something to them. Their faces shifted from curiosity to discomfort. That night, Mrs. Winthrop summoned me into her study. The twins said something strange, she said gently. Veronica told them you were dismissed for touching things that weren't yours, that you made her kids cry on purpose. My heart dropped. I could feel the foundation I'd built cracking beneath me. I called Celeste in tears. Her response was calm. Cold. This ends now, she said. The following afternoon, she brought me to meet a woman named Iris Drayton, a refined woman in her 50s with silver hair and hawk-like eyes. Iris was what Celeste called a cleaner, the kind people hired when reputations needed defending without mess. I don't break laws, Iris clarified with a thin smile, but I do keep records. As it turned out, she'd been compiling data on Veronica's family for years. Her client? A potential business partner of Veronica's husband, who had backed out after discovering some very shady practices. Iris handed over a small USB drive to Celeste with a nod. Her husband's been moving assets off the books. Pre-divorce maneuvering. And Veronica? Sleeping with her Pilates instructor. Use that wisely. Celeste's counterstrike came in the form of something deceptively civilized. A private dinner at her penthouse. The guest list? The Winthrops, Veronica, and her husband, plus a few other significant figures from their social circle. I wasn't there as a nanny. I was introduced as Celeste's new executive assistant. I wore a borrowed Fendi dress and had memorized every word of my role. Everything went smoothly, until dessert. That's when Celeste, with a crystal coupe in hand, turned the conversation toward character. I've always believed the way someone treats their staff reveals who they really are, she said casually, eyes settling on Veronica. Especially when it comes to things like lying, falsely accusing someone of theft, spreading fake evidence. You know, small stuff. The room went deathly quiet as Celeste laid it all out. Every scheme, every lie Veronica had spread. She pulled out Nova's digital report and shared the forged posts, timelines, and traces of manipulation. Then, she turned to Veronica's husband. And Conrad, she said with a raised eyebrow. Are you sure Veronica's been honest with you? What followed was like watching a building implode in perfect sequence. Celeste didn't reveal everything, just enough about the affair and shady asset shuffling to send both Veronica and Conrad spiraling into damage control mode. Suddenly, they weren't attacking me. They were tearing into each other. The Winthrops sat in stunned silence, Mrs. Winthrop stealing side glances at me, her expression slowly shifting to understanding. By the time dessert was cleared, Veronica and her husband left separately, furious, her barely keeping it together. The fallout came fast. Conrad filed for divorce the following week, sparking a financial probe into his holdings, the very thing Veronica had been trying to avoid. Then the trainer's wife went public with the affair, unleashing a tidal wave of scandal in Brentmere society. Celeste kept her promise. Veronica was neutralized. With her energy focused on salvaging her crumbling reputation and legal mess, she no longer had the resources or time to harass me. The Winthrops apologized sincerely, even gave me a generous bonus for my loyalty and professionalism. I thought it was finally over, until I got a text from an unknown number. You think you've won? You have no idea who you're messing with. Attached was a photo of me entering my apartment, taken just hours earlier. Chilled, I showed Celeste immediately. She wasted no time. Nova was called in again. She found 2 micro cameras installed in my apartment, one in the living room, the other watching the hallway. Professionally done, she muttered, disarming them. This wasn't some amateur job. Someone paid top dollar. I felt completely violated, barely able to sleep at night, jumping at every sound. Celeste insisted I stay in her guest flat, while Nova's team deep cleaned my apartment for surveillance and reinforced the security. While I was there, Celeste finally shared her own story. She'd once worked for a powerful family too, until she refused the husband's inappropriate advances. That decision nearly ruined her life. Rich people think their money makes them untouchable, she told me. Until someone smarter and richer fights back. A week later, things escalated again. I was helping the twins paint flower pots when Mrs. Winthrop entered, visibly rattled. There's an officer here, she whispered. He says you're being investigated for stalking. Apparently, Veronica had filed a restraining order, claiming I'd sent threatening emails and had been spotted lurking around her home. The officer was respectful but stern. He showed blurry footage of someone about my size and fabricated emails supposedly from me. I was being framed. Again. Thankfully, the Winthrops backed me immediately, confirming I'd been working with them during the alleged incidents. Celeste launched her full network, Aiden the attorney, Nova, and even Nova's contacts, to build a counterattack. Nova's partner DT dove into the fake emails and quickly found evidence of spoofing. But before we could act, something unexpected happened. Conrad reached out to Celeste. He wanted a meeting. She's gone rogue, he said, and I was allowed to be there when he explained. She's tracking my calls, threatening to leak tax documents, and I believe she planted the surveillance in your apartment. Not out of concern for me, but because Veronica had become a legal and financial bomb waiting to go off. He handed over bank records and receipts from a private security firm known for its shady clientele. They had ties to digital forgery and physical surveillance. Combined with DT's data, it was enough to get the restraining order dismissed and open the door for criminal charges against Veronica for filing a false police report. But it wasn't over yet. One evening, after finishing up with the twins, I came home and immediately knew something was wrong. My front door was slightly ajar. I didn't step inside. I called Nova. She arrived with her team and cleared the space before letting me in. My apartment had been trashed, cushions gutted, shelves overturned, and most disturbing of all, red paint. I hoped it was paint, smeared across my bedroom wall with a message that made my skin crawl. The police weren't convinced Veronica was behind it. Wealthy women don't do break-ins, one officer said. But they didn't understand obsession. The building's security footage? Mysteriously corrupted. But a neighbor reported seeing a woman in oversized sunglasses and a scarf darting from the building minutes before I got home. The description was vague, but I knew who it was. And Celeste? She had reached her limit. This ends now, Celeste said flatly, her voice like steel. She activated what she chillingly referred to as her nuclear option. Within their elite social scene was a covert inner circle, legacy families with influence deeper than politics, the kind of people who decided who belonged and who didn't. Celeste had avoided involving them until now, but Veronica's escalating behavior had left her no choice. 3 days later, I was invited as Celeste's guest to an exclusive charity gala hosted at the Whitmore's estate, a sprawling Georgian mansion in Old Mill Haven. Their family had once controlled shipping lanes along the entire East Coast. The scale of luxury made Veronica's estate look like a rental. Veronica and Conrad were there too, though arriving separately. Throughout the night, I watched as guests subtly distanced themselves from Veronica. Conversations fell quiet when she approached. Small groups dispersed as soon as she joined. It wasn't rude, it was surgical. Celeste leaned in at one point and murmured, "They're not gossiping. They're safeguarding the circle." Unpredictability is the one sin they won't forgive. The evening's climax came during a toast delivered by Mrs. Whitmore, a formidable woman in her 70s. Without ever saying Veronica's name, she spoke of dignity, discretion, and how those who failed to uphold those values would find themselves unwelcome. Her eyes landed squarely on Veronica. You could almost hear the social guillotine fall. By the time the event ended, Veronica had been excommunicated. Her final look, a cocktail of panic, shame, and rage, stayed with me. I genuinely thought it was over. Then, 3 days later, Celeste called early in the morning. "Check your inbox," she said. What I saw nearly made me vomit. A video, edited to look like I was screaming at the Winthrop twins, manhandling them, ignoring their cries. It was terrifyingly realistic, clearly made using high-end deepfake tech, mixing footage from their home security system with synthetic overlays. Attached was a note. "Confess to lying about Veronica. Publicly. Or this goes to the police and the Winthrops in 24 hours. I was shaking. I sent it to Celeste, DT, and Aiden immediately. Within the hour, we regrouped at Celeste's apartment. DT confirmed it. Top-tier fabrication. Proving it false would take time we didn't have. "We need to go to the Winthrops before this blindsides them," Aiden urged. We did. Mrs. Winthrop burst into tears, not because she believed it, but because it looked real. Mr. Winthrop was furious, trying to understand how their private footage had been compromised. And just when I thought we'd exhausted every option, Celeste made one final call. She didn't say much, just something cryptic about needing assistance like we discussed after Marseille. 2 hours later, a man named Lennox arrived. Impeccably dressed, foreign accent, and the kind of sharpness in his eyes that told you he wasn't just another rich guy. Lennox reviewed everything, especially the deepfake, then asked specific, chillingly efficient questions about Veronica's routines, her separation from Conrad, and access points to her personal tech. When he stood, he said only, "I'll take care of it." I still don't know exactly what Lennox did. But that same night, the anonymous email account sent a final message. "I withdraw my threat and all future actions. This matter is concluded. No signature, no trace." And just like that, Veronica vanished from our lives. The very next day, Veronica sold her estate with barely a whisper, pulled her children out of Westbridge Academy, and according to Celeste's sources, relocated to a quiet little town in Oregon to live with extended family. Conrad, now pushing forward with the divorce uncontested, told people she'd suffered a nervous breakdown and needed to drastically simplify her life. The community accepted the story without a blink, already distracted by a fresh scandal involving a hedge fund and a mysterious yacht incident in Monaco. No charges were ever filed. No official statements made. Veronica just disappeared, erased from the social register as thoroughly as if she'd never existed. I kept working for the Winthrops, who stood by me the entire way. Celeste remained in my life, not just a mentor anymore, but someone I trusted. She brought me along to more of those secretive soirees, helped me decode the silent hierarchy of luxury and power. I never saw Veronica again, though now and then I'd get a notification that someone in Oregon had viewed my profile. And the truth is, the secrets the rich keep aren't all that different from anyone else's: infidelity, debt, dysfunctional families, but wrapped in marble and hidden by private investigators. The biggest revelation? It's not the money they fear losing. It's access, status, belonging. They'll burn the world down to avoid exile. Even now, sometimes I catch myself scanning corners for hidden cameras or checking under furniture before I sleep. There's always that tiny, paranoid thought. What if Veronica comes back? But I remember what Celeste said the last time I voiced that fear. People like Veronica don't recover from collapse. Not really. They just find smaller ponds where they can pretend to be big again. I want to believe her. I really do. That evening, I found myself restless and tense. My apartment felt hollow, quiet in that eerie, buzzing kind of way. I grabbed my keys, needing to move, to breathe. The elevator was broken again, so I flew down the stairs 2 at a time. Outside, the air was sharp and humid. A storm was coming. I walked aimlessly through the neighborhood. It had changed a lot since I first moved here. Upscale cafes replaced greasy diners. Trendy boutiques where mom-and-pop shops used to stand. A group of college kids passed me, laughing about something stupid and joyful. I felt a pang, nostalgia, maybe, or envy. I couldn't remember the last time I'd laughed like that. My phone buzzed. Celeste. I almost didn't answer, but she hadn't steered me wrong yet. I found something, she said without greeting. New records. Offshore accounts linked to a shell company Veronica used. It's bigger than we thought. I let out a slow breath. Celeste, I need a break. She paused, then simply said, tomorrow. I agreed. Hung up. Kept walking until I reached the park. It was nearly empty, just a few dog walkers and a couple tangled up on a bench. I sat beneath a tree, not caring that the grass was damp. My mind was racing, backtracking everything. And it always circled back to that first email. 6 months ago. A message from an unfamiliar sender. An attached document. Financials from Veronica's firm. Proof they were embezzling client funds. I thought it was a prank. Veronica had been my boss, my mentor. She trusted me. I deleted the email. 3 days later, another one. Then another. More proof. Details only someone on the inside could know. Eventually, I brought it to Celeste, our compliance officer. She wasn't surprised. We started digging. Secret meetings, flash drives, after-hours scans. It felt like corporate espionage, like something out of a spy thriller. Only it was real. When we had enough, we went to the board. At first, they defended her. She was powerful, respected, but the evidence was airtight. The board called an emergency meeting. Veronica walked in cool and confident. She left in disgrace. The firm announced her resignation the next morning. The SEC opened an investigation. Her bank accounts were frozen. Friends vanished. It all unraveled. I thought watching her fall would feel good. It didn't. It felt hollow, just sad. Raindrops began tapping my face. I looked up at the sky, now dark and heavy. I stood, wiped off my jeans, and started walking back home. My phone buzzed again. Unknown number. I hesitated and answered. Silence. Then breathing. Slow. Purposeful. Then a click. I stood frozen. Wrong number? Maybe. But my whole body was suddenly tense. I walked faster. The drizzle turned into a downpour. I started to run. By the time I reached my apartment, I was completely soaked. The lobby was dead quiet except for the overnight concierge. He gave me a nod as I passed, and I took the stairs again, too anxious to wait for the ancient elevator. I was panting a little by the time I got to my floor, but the moment I turned the corner, I froze. My apartment door was ajar. I never leave it open. Ever. My stomach dropped. I stood completely still. My instincts screamed at me. Check it myself. Run. Call the cops. I opted for caution and nudged the door slowly. The lights wouldn't turn on. Power cut. I flipped on my phone flashlight and scanned the room. At first glance, everything looked fine. Then I saw the floor. All my files were spread out. Every document related to the case. My laptop was gone. The drawer where I kept the encrypted backup drives? Open. Empty. Someone had known exactly what to take. I backed out slowly, heart pounding, and called Celeste while keeping my eyes locked on the stairwell. She picked up on the first ring. I kept my voice low, explaining everything. Get out, she said immediately. Meet me at the fallback location. And don't talk to anyone. I bolted down the stairs. The concierge looked up, surprised to see me again so soon. I mumbled something about forgetting a meeting and didn't wait for his response. Outside, the rain had stopped. The pavement glistened under the streetlights. I took a long, winding path, down alleyways, around corners, doubling back, passing the same diner twice. Every car felt like it was trailing me. Every glance from a stranger seemed too long. The storage unit we'd rented months ago, just in case, was on the edge of an industrial zone, nestled between shuttered warehouses. Celeste had registered it under a fake name. I punched in the code and slipped through the gate before it fully opened. The unit was in a dark back corner. I unlocked it with the key she'd given me ages ago. The lock stuck a little, but it finally gave way. Inside, Celeste was already waiting. A small camping lantern illuminated her face, tense, focused. Her laptop was open. Someone accessed a Cayman account we didn't know about, she said without greeting. The money from Veronica's old firm is connected to some dangerous people. She didn't need to explain. The break-in hadn't been random. It was a message. Celeste had already moved all sensitive materials to this unit days ago. She'd had a gut feeling. She always thinks ahead. It's probably why she's still alive in a world like this. We spent the next hour quietly preparing to vanish. We'd done our part. The authorities had enough evidence. Our chapter was over. She handed me a bag, burner phone, cash, prepaid cards, a fake ID. It was all ready. She'd even included sunglasses and a hoodie. We agreed to split up. Too risky to stay together. Too easy to track one target. We'd meet in 2 weeks at a safe house in Asheville. Until then, no contact. No tech. Analog only. I left first. The streets felt unfamiliar now. Each shadow sharper. Every passing face a potential threat. I hailed a cab and gave an address 2 neighborhoods away from where I actually planned to go. Watched the rearview mirror the entire ride. Nothing obvious. Paid in cash. Walked the last few blocks to a seedy little motel that didn't ask questions. Flickering neon sign. Parking lot full of beat-up sedans. Weekly rates available. Perfect. I checked in using the ID Celeste gave me. Paid for a few nights. The room reeked of bleach and stale cigarettes. The bed groaned under my weight. I didn't sleep. Every footstep in the hallway made me flinch. Every engine in the lot made me peek through the blinds. At sunrise, I was already packed. I kept moving. New place every night. Cheap motels, all paid in cash. Took buses. Walked side streets. Stayed invisible. Once, I called Celeste from a payphone. 3 rings, hang up, call back. Code phrase exchanged. She was alive, still on the move. Then, day 9. I was sipping bad coffee in a greasy diner near a rail yard when I saw him. The doorman from my building. Across the street. Window shopping, pretending. But his eyes were scanning, searching for me. I didn't finish my coffee. Slipped into the kitchen, ignored the yelling staff, exited through the alley, and kept moving. Through a department store, out another door, onto a subway, then a bus, then walked for what felt like miles. New area, new motel, new name, still breathing, still free. But for how long?